What do you believe is the greatest threat to the United States? Agenda 2525 and Trump as president, creating martial law, arresting those who disagree, promoting violence, total chaos, giving Putin Ukraine, cozying up to dictators, refusing to leave when his term is up, becoming increasingly more senile and dangerous, destroying all environmental and work safety protections, eliminating protection against monopolies, thus turning American over to the rich oligarchs. Not a theory. It's what Trump has said, and the actual agenda of 2525 as written. The Republican Party, the party of small government. In Florida, you can only read books that are approved by Ron DeSantis. You can only say words that are approved by Ron DeSantis. Your doctor can only give you care if it's approved by Ron DeSantis. You can only teach a version of history that is approved by Ron DeSantis. A woman can only do with her uterus what is approved by Ron DeSantis. But tell me again how the Dems are coming for your rights. Morons. Not a single comment about fiat and fractional reserve banking in here. If people understood the true nature of inflation, they would riot in the streets. Inflation is modern-day slavery. You're forced to spend more of your time well into retirement to acquire the same amount of resources to live. If it's not slavery, what else do you call the theft of time spent working for someone else? Our owners who hold real property are the benefactors of inflation. They love it. The biggest threat to the United States is social media and the media itself. We have let media drive such a wedge between us, be it politics, race, religion, sexual identity or the myriad of other issues, that everyone identifies solely as that item for them and hates anyone different. People with different views are now the enemy. I hate that. I liked having friends with all kinds of views and interests. Efforts by far-right, nationalist, Christo-fascists to establish a permanent, minority-ruled, white supremacist, Christian theocracy. If there are future elections, the results will be ignored by any state or federal House or Senate controlled by Republicans. Ohio is already attempting to ignore the results of this week's referendums. The Supreme Court, as it exists, is an illegitimate group. Capitalism, aka the subjugation of workers for the benefit of a non-democratic elite class. It may not come in my lifetime, but inevitably the lower class will organize and realize the things they make and produce don't have to be going to the pocket of one CEO and instead can be shared through all the employees in a system backed by a new government. FBI agents, I'm just speculating here. Trump has laid the groundwork for autocracy. Today Netanyahu fired the defense minister. BCA was being investigated. In other words, he now controls the courts. He is sole power. Israel is no longer a democracy but an autocracy. I'll say it again. Our tax dollars are going to fund an autocratic Zionist Nazi regime. That is what a Trump or future Trump will do. Vote blue. Ultranationism and the push to integrate Christian ideology into government law and function. We the USA are losing our identity as a cultural melting pot with welcoming arms to immigrants that want a chance at a better life. There's a strong insidious movement that seems to be seeking to homogenize our society into some dystopian Chesterton's-only conservative police state. The few elites that own everything in the country and cooperative to profit off our misery. They feed us shit, make us ill, inflate the currency, dumb down the population, pay us shit, charge ridiculous prices, and then feed us a bullshit culture war so we continue to fight amongst ourselves while they continue to do their work in the shadows out of view from the public. Republicans, and there is no close second. Project 2025 makes an act plan in 2000 look quaint. X200B. They tried to overthrow the Constitution and longest-running free democracy on the planet in service of a rabid game show host con-man narcissist imbecile in 2020. They will not stop. If the GOP ever gets full power again, that's the end of American democracy. Ignorance. Thinking America is the best when there has been little to no progress in God knows how long. It's so stagnant. Best example. Why can't we get basic public transportation with high-speed least 3 lines? Down the coastlines of East and West and connect the 2 coastlines. Depression and anxiety are probably the greatest threats to the continued existence of the US. Depression destroys public will to do. Add an anxiety over even basic things like groceries or housing, family or social life, you have a perfect recipe for despotism to creep in. Religious extremism. This idea that the right way to govern a country is violent ideology of a specific religion, and the absolute refusal to budge or compromise on anything that even suggests that the religion may be flawed. That's what will kill this country. Ben Franklin widely forewarned us back when about the biggest threat to ourselves the founders gave us a republic. if we can keep it. It is our game to lose, in the road we're on we may very well not be able to keep it. The biggest threat to us, is obesity. And by extension, heart failure. FRT, I would think it's intelligence. I feel for the sorry state of our education system and what has happened over the last few years alone. Those poor students, caught up in the mix of unwarranted censorship, the voting populace that would vote for a grifty narcissistic lying egomaniac because they think it will hasten the second coming of Christ. Quite a rabbit hole scavenger hunt to achieve closure and revelations, but am I hitting the nail on the head? The interpretation of the First Amendment such that we cannot legally distinguish between facts and fiction in many cases. For every fact there are an infinite amount of lies. If lies carry the same weight as facts, our grip on reality is lost. A lot of people are calling out internal conflict, and while I agree it's a danger, the Red Scare happened, not to mention the politics surrounding the Vietnam War. The USA has been far more divided politically before and recovered. Conservative media. They have otherwise good people ginned up to where they're storming pizza shops with rifles trying to save children from the sex dungeons in the basement. They really need to knock it off and engage with reality. Stupidity. I'm being serious too. We keep pushing these useless degrees instead of something useful. That's why everyone is so obsessed with politics, gender, religion. The last 10 years cause this country has gotten incredibly stupid. Trump, MAGA asshats, NRA, and pretty much all of the Republican Party, since Republicans have no spine or decency to push back against Trump and instead double down on him and are willing to sacrifice freedom for that dipshit. Ultimately, a combination of atomized media, foreign powers stirring up trouble, lack of trust in each other and in public institutions, single-member political constituencies, gerrymandering, and first-past-the-post voting. Pride and arrogance. Lack of humility and curiosity. Lack of critical thinking skills. People treating opinion as fact. Editorial as news. Disrespect and outright contempt for expert opinion. Pathological selfishness. Great power competition. The United States is facing increasing competition from China and other great powers. This competition is playing out in a number of areas, including trade, technology, and military affairs itself. It seems like the government is intentionally widening the divide between the citizens. Everything is us versus them. We either need to come together or finish the divide, the break up the country into parts. White male conservatives. X200B. Scratch that. Anyone who continues to support Donald Trump, the only thing that kept him from pulling off a fascist coup in 2020 was his total ineptitude. White male conservatives. X200B. Scratch that. Anyone who continues to support Donald Trump, the only thing that kept him from pulling off a fascist coup in 2020 was his total ineptitude. Back in the 60s there was a cartoon strip called Pogo. The turtle, whose name I don't recall, said, "We see the enemy, and they is us." Things are not so different now from 50-60 years ago. The establishment politicians on both sides of the aisle who are beholden to special interests like the mic and corporate dollar. That and the unelected ruling wielding far too much power. Trump. He's literally turning the country against itself. All these years worrying about Russia, China, and the Middle East, and its biggest threat was from within. It's kind of ironic. Ignorance and disregard for the Constitution, and democracy. Disregard for truth and facts, and readiness to generate and propagate disinformation. It's all good is not good. Racial tribalism ideologies, Marxist ideologies. The Trump cult, right-wing religious fanaticism, an apathetic middle class and apathetic voters, a failing education system, modern capitalism. People already feel squeezed for everything they're worth. I'm surprised that something big hasn't broken already, but it feels bound to happen. What do I believe? The climate crisis will affect the US and everyone on this planet. The biggest threat is being denied by half of the US, it's so fucked up. Yep, reminds me of the Roman Empire at its peak. It seemed the only thing that could beat a Roman army at that point was a Roman army. And they regularly did. Disinformation and division that is spread by social media, absorbed by the uneducated, and likely made worse by exterior parties such as China and Russia. The rise of Christian nationalists and the co-option of one of the two major political parties by people who are hell-bent on destroying the Constitution. Far left and far right. Extremists. Those who want to rip pages out of the Constitution of the United States. Those who want to erase the Bill of Rights. As outsider that follows your stuff, conservative extremist. Other than that, maybe China if you are talking about soft power and political influence. Republicans more now than ever. Beware of Project 2025. When, not if, the next Republican is elected president, they will implement Project 2025. Rampant anti-Americanism and youth culture. You can acknowledge that your country isn't perfect without hating everything it stands for altogether. Social isolation. I know people will say we have things like the internet and social media, but people are losing actual in-person social skills. Complacency. We feel so secure in our daily lives that we obsess over ideology nuance. We don't recognize how dangerous the world has become. Republicans are getting too comfy with the idea of a strongman president who's above the law. Democracy is becoming an annoyance to them. Easily climate change. And that's true for the whole world. Other problems may seem huge, but climate change is a true existential threat. Victimhood movements and victim mentality. Victimhood implies restitution, and restitution implies violence, but not everyone is a victim. Corporations and their corrupting influence on politicians. You don't need to control the voters when you control who they can vote for. Social media and always connected smartphones. A democracy can't function with so many idiots talking. That includes 98 of Redditors. Lack of imagination. Do you think is the greatest threat to the fentanyl crisis? No contest. If people truly understood how bad it was, they'd want every gang member to be given the death penalty. Oligarchs. Not Russian. American and at least one South African. It's not enough to have all the money. They want total control. When the president and leadership in Congress are literally incoherent, or don't believe in dinosaurs, you'll know we're close.